Hi everybody, welcome to the final science review explanation. This is the last test to go through before you go to your exam. And the questions from this are not really taken from any one place. I've been looking all over the internet, looking for different practice questions, things that I think might be helpful for you, and especially things that I think might be quite difficult. So let's have a look together for this final practice. So the map shows the Earth's continents, the outlines, plates that make up the Earth's outer shell, and the locations of the volcanoes. So we can look at the key. The red line is the equator, the black line is the plate boundary, and the yellow dots are active volcanoes. What conclusion can be drawn by looking at this map? A, volcanoes are scattered randomly across the Earth. Well, they're kind of in lines. We have a long line of volcanoes that comes down here. And then another one that kind of comes on this side. We don't have many volcanoes in the middle of the ocean, which is also the middle of the plate. We have the plate boundary that's going around here. So this is the plate boundary. This is the middle of the ocean, but it's also the middle of a plate. And we don't have many volcanoes there. The volcanoes tend to be close to the black lines. So the yellow dot and the black line tend to be close together. There is a connection between the plate boundary and the location of the volcanoes. It's not going to be answer A. They're not random. B, volcanoes are only located along the edge of continents. Well, this is the edge of the continent, and there is no volcano there. Also, that word only would mean nowhere else. But we have earthquake here in the middle of the ocean. So we do have some earthquakes that are in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of oceans. We also do not have any earthquakes along the western side of Africa or the eastern side of South America. So B is not proven. C, volcanoes are mostly means majority, but not everyone. That would make sense. Located along the boundaries between plates. Well, this is a plate boundary. 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 Most of the volcanoes are close to plate boundaries. Yes, there are a few volcanoes that are not near the plate boundaries, but the majority are close to plate boundaries. So C looks like a good answer. D, volcanoes are distributed equally in the northern and southern hemisphere. If we look, the equator is the difference between the north and the south. There seem to be a lot more volcanoes here than here. There seem to be more in the north than the south. So D is also not true. So the diagram above shows a typical energy pyramid, starting with the producers at the bottom and going to the tertiary consumers at the top. Which statement correctly describes the flow of energy through this pyramid? Well, we know that energy goes from the producer into the primary consumer, from the primary to the secondary, and from the secondary to the tertiary. We know that 90% is lost at each level. Only 10% goes up at each level. So A, all of the energy from the lower level goes to the top level is not correct. 90% is lost at each level. B, the producer level directly provides energy for all of the other levels? No, the producer directly gives to the primary consumer, not to the secondary or the tertiary consumer. C, the highest amount of energy is transferred between levels that contain consumers. Well, the highest is represented by the largest section of the pyramid, and that's the producers. So as you go up between the consumers, you actually get lower levels of energy. C is not correct. D, energy is directly transferred from the primary to the secondary consumer, yes, energy is directly transferred between primary and secondary consumer because the secondary consumer is eating the primary consumer. So D is the correct answer. Number 3. The scientist collects data on the solubility of different salts at different temperatures. So we have different salt and different temperature. The results are shown in the graph. What conclusion is supported by the data? Well, we have PbNO32, which is the pinky one. We have the KNO3, the blue one. We have NaCl, the yellow one. KCl, the green one. And the purple one is C2SO4. Solubility always increases as the temperature increases. Well, increase a little bit, increase a lot, increase. Oh, no. Ce2SO4 is going down. One of them is decreasing. So A is not correct. B, at 40 degrees Celsius, KCl has the highest solubility at 40 degrees Celsius. So we find 40 degrees on the x-axis and we go up. And the highest solubility is the pink color. And the pink color is PbNO3, lead nitrate, not KCl. So B is not correct. C, the rate of change in the solubility of KNO3 changes as the temperature increases. KNO3, the rate of change changes. Well, here it changes slowly. Here it changes more quickly. Here it changes very quickly. If we look at KCl, we have a straight line. KCl is not a curved line. When the line is curved, the rate of change is getting quicker or slower. When the line is straight, there is a constant rate of change. So C is true. A line like this, you get quicker and quicker and quicker. A line that is straight, well, if you go up 10, 20, you might go across 10, 20. For every 10 you go up, you go 10 on the other scale. Well, this one, if we look at the blue one for a moment, for the first 10 degrees, we go less than one row. For the next 10 degrees, we go from this row part way into the next row. For the next 10 degrees, it's almost 2 rows. By the time we get to 50 degrees, it's going up very, very, very quickly. So this is sometimes called exponential. An exponential rate of change is not a constant rate of change. The last one, the solubility of NaCl does not increase. Well, it starts halfway in this row, and by the end, it's crossed over this line. So it has increased a little bit. Even though it's slow, it has increased. Some researchers are studying parasitic fungi for use as insecticides due to their natural ability to penetrate and destroy insect tissues. Other researchers argue that there are few potential uses for the fungi as insecticides with multiple targets. Which fact from the passage supports the argument that parasitic fungi offer, at best, severely limited potential as insecticides that target many kinds of insects? So we're looking for something that says it is not very useful. It has a limited potential. It is not very useful. And we're looking for a fact from the passage. So actually, we don't need to read the whole passage. We only need to read these 4 answers. You are looking in one of these four answers for something about limited use, something about not targeting many kinds of insects. Well, A, fungi reproduce inside the insect's body. That could be disease, that could kill, that could be a good reason to use the fungi. B, the fungi entirely control the insect's behavior. If you control the insect, you can stop them from eating the crops. So that would be good. C, some of the fungi may be host-specific parasites. Host-specific would mean that they could not go to live in any animal. They could only live in a certain type of animal. The host is the one that the parasite lives on. So the worm lives inside of you. The worm is the parasite. You are the host. Well, host-specific means cannot live in any host, can only live in certain host. D, some of the fungi produce pods that grow from an insect's head. So at this point, C looks like the best answer because the question is looking for something that can kill many kinds of insects, but this says the insect is specific. Now, if we look at the passage, it says some parasitic fungi may be host-specific, meaning that a fungus species only infects a particular type of insect. So what this went on to say is that it only infects certain types of insects. The other thing that you can do, if you don't understand the quotation that you have in the answer, you can try to find that quotation in the passage and then read the rest of the sentence or read the sentence that comes before or after. Either you understood host-specific or you saw that infects only a particular type of insect, and that is not going to help to target many different kinds of insects. So C is the correct answer. Newton's second law of motion states that the acceleration of an object is dependent on the object's mass and the amount of force applied to it. The table shows data from an investigation on Newton's second law. So we have a force of 8, mass of 2, acceleration of 4. But we have a force of 16 when the mass is 2 and the acceleration is doubled to 8. Looking at the other two masses that are same, looking at 4 and 4, when there's an acceleration of 2, there's a force of 8. When that acceleration is doubled to 4, the acceleration also doubles to 16. So, what statement describes the pattern established by the data in the chart? A doubling of the net force increases the acceleration 4 times. So 8 to 16 is only 4 to 8. So it's not 4 times, it's double. If you double the acceleration, you double the force. Or you double the force, you double the acceleration. So A is not correct. B, a doubling of the net force decreases acceleration 2 times when the object's mass is constant. Is it decreasing or increasing? Well, 4 to 8 is an increase. 2 to 4 is also an increase. So it's an increase, not a decrease. A doubling of the mass decreases the acceleration of the object by half when the net force is constant. Let's have a look at that. If we double the mass, does it decrease the acceleration? Well, when the mass goes from 2 to 4, the acceleration goes from 4 to 2. that is half. When the force is constant, force of 8 and 8. So C is a good description of those first two lines. D, a doubling of the mass, so 2 to 4, increases the acceleration, but again, 8 to 4 is a decrease, not an increase. So just by checking each part, the doubling of the force increases or decreases the acceleration how many times, by checking each of these three parts against the table, we can see that 3 of the answers are false. The diagram shows an event that occurs during meiosis. What is the result of the event? So we begin with the mother and father's DNA, and at the end, we had the blue and the red, and the red and the blue. In the beginning, there was one red and one blue. So what's happened is the DNA has crossed over. The chromosomes have crossed over, and the offspring are not identical to the parents. A, chromosomes that are genetically identical to the paternal chromosome. We are looking at the result of the event, so we're looking at the result, the end part. So the result, they have different DNA to the paternal. At the end, they're red and a little blue, blue and a little red. The paternal was only red, so A is false. B, identical to the maternal. Well, the maternal's on this side, and we can see that there is a totally blue chromosomes, whereas at the end, we have a mostly blue chromosome and a mostly red chromosome with two different tips, with red tip and blue tip. They are not the same as the maternal. C, chromosomes that are a genetic combination, adding together of the parents' chromosomes. Well, let's take that. If we were to cut this part off of here and this part off of here and swap them over, then that would be the same as the father and that would be the same as the mother. So what we have is a combination, a joining together and a reordering of the mother and the father. So C is correct. D, chromosomes that contain different amount of genetic material cannot be correct. Whatever goes in will also come out. Scientists infer from the investigation that fish raised in water with high levels of acidity have difficulty hearing predatory sounds. Which excerpt from the text supports this inference? So again, we have all of the excerpts from the text already. There is nothing here that is not in the text, and we have to choose one of them. We are looking for something that includes higher level of acidity, difficulty in hearing, predatory sounds. So we're looking for those three things to be in one of the answers. I could actually just change that a little bit. We're looking for difficulty in hearing and we're looking for the predatory sounds. So A, rising ocean acidity levels. That's the first part. May harm marine life. Marine life includes fish. For example, high acid levels may cause hearing loss, difficulty hearing. So we do have those two parts mentioned in answer A. B, sounds from predatory fish were played from an underwater speaker at one end of the aquarium, at a volume that was only audible to the fish when it was swimming near the speaker. Now, this is just a description of what was done. It's not a conclusion, and it doesn't include difficulty hearing. So take away answer B. The other tank contains 600, 700, 900 microatmospheres of CO2 respectively. Again, this one is also a description. Neither of these two include about difficulty hearing. D, the study showed that the fish raised in elevated CO2 level, and CO2 does create acid in the water, so a high level of acid is matched by the increased CO2 level, did not avoid the sound, hearing difficulty, not avoid the sound of the predatory fish. So we need to choose between answer A and answer D, but we're looking for support. So first thing to do is to take away the answers that don't include those key ideas of acidity, hearing, and predatory sounds. So take away B and C. But then one of these must support the hypothesis, to support the claim. And the problem with answer A is that it says may. Anything may happen. Something may happen is not evidence that it does happen. D, the study showed. Well, the study is showing something. This is an experiment. This is what happened. This is support. So the correct answer is D. And we're asked, what are the independent and dependent variables in the investigation? Well, what did they do? A group of fertilized eggs from the same parents were divided into 4 different aquariums, fish bowls, each with a different pressure of CO2. One tank contained the normal atmospheric conditions of 390 microatmospheres of CO2. The other tank had 600, 700, and 900. So the person doing the experiment has chosen to have different pressure of CO2, different pressures of CO2. So the CO2 pressure was changed by the person doing the experiment. This is the independent variable. What did they look at? What was measured or observed? Well, to prepare for the experiment, one fish was placed into the aquarium containing the same CO2 pressure as it was raised. The fish's position was recorded every 5 seconds for 2 minutes. Then sounds from predatory fish were played from an underwater speaker at one end of the aquarium at a volume that was only audible to the fish when swimming near the speaker. The fish's position was again recorded every 5 seconds for 2 minutes. Trials were repeated, but what was recorded, that word record, is going to show the dependent variable, and it's the fish's position. The position of the fish was recorded. It was observed, measured, and recorded. This is the dependent variable. Researchers collected data to determine volumetric bone density for 4 samples. The data recorded in the table above. What is the average bone density for the data of the samples provided? Density is equal to the mass divided by the volume. So we need to work out the density of each one. So for number 1, it is 6.8 divided by 22.6. So let's put the density, let's make a third column here, and we'll write down the density. So 6.8 divided by 22.6. You can put that into your calculator. And we get the answer 0.30. And then the next one, we have 1.7 divided by 5.4. So you can put that in your calculator again, 1.7 divided by 5.4, which gives you 0.31. 0.31. And then number 3, we have 3.6 divided by 11.3, which gives 0.318. If you want to do it to 2 decimal places, that would be 0.32. We got 0.318. So if you chop it off, this will become 0.32. And then for the last one, 5.2 divided by 17.4 is 0.298. 0.298. If we want to go 2 decimal places, like most of these answers are 2 decimal places, that will become 30. So 0.30. We then need to add these together and divide by 4. So we have 0.3 plus 0.31 plus 0.32 plus 0.3 gives us 1.23. Then divide by 4 because we have 4 samples. And we get 0.3075. At this point, we want to go to 2 decimal places, so the 7 makes this become a 1. So the answer is 0.31. The answer is C. We are told that the density is the mass divided by the volume, so we have to work out the density for each of the 4 samples, and then when we have that, we can average to find the final answer. It could be argued that this experiment was not set up using proper experimental protocol. Protocol just means design. What would need to change in the experiment for the results to be valid? The batteries should all be given either name brand or generic. Only 2 groups should have been tested at a time. The same battery should have been used in each flashlight, or the same flashlight should have been used to test each battery. Let's have a look at the experiment. Battery companies make impressive claims about how long their batteries will last. A student decided to test the running time of different batteries to determine which battery lasts the longest. The student tested 6 different batteries, 4 brand name and 2 generic. Don't worry about brand name and generic, but the student has chosen 6 different batteries, and the student uses flashlights to test the batteries. So 1 battery is put into each of those 6 flashlights, and we get different amounts of time. We have 101 hours, 99 hours, 80 hours, 75 hours, 30 hours, 29 hours. So what we find is that the different batteries give different amounts of light when they're used in the flashlight. But what's the problem with this? Well, the batteries should all have been name brand or generic. I don't think that really matters. Doesn't really matter because we're just testing 6 different batteries, so whether it's a name or generic does not matter. Only 2 groups should have been tested at a time. Well, if you test 2 battery, that means that you need 2 flashlights. You put 1 battery into each flashlight. So test 2 by 2. We'll come back to that. The same battery should have been used in each flashlight is impossible. We cannot use the same battery because we want to test the different batteries to see which battery lasts the longest. The student is testing the running time of different batteries to find out which battery lasts the longest, which one is the best battery. So you cannot just keep the same battery because the battery is the independent variable. The dependent variable in this is the amount of light, the running time of the flashlight. So you don't keep the independent variable the same. That is the one thing that you do want to change. So it's not answer C. D, the same flashlight should have been used to test each battery. Well, if the battery is going to be the independent variable and the runtime is going to be the dependent variable, We want to keep everything else the same. Otherwise, the results are inaccurate. If you have two things that are changed, you don't know if the difference that you find is because of the first thing or the second thing. Different flashlights might need different amounts of energy. If he has 6 different flashlights, each one might need different amounts of energy. One might be brighter, one might be less bright. So you should use the same flashlight. The same flashlight will always use the same amount of energy, and so any difference in the length of time that the light works can be concluded to be the result of the battery type. So the correct answer is D. B would be better than using 6 different flashlights, but it would still have 2 different flashlights, so there would still be the extra variable. That's why D is the best answer. Below is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. Which of the following statements about photosynthesis is correct? Well, 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O creates C6H12O6 and 6 O2. So when 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, yes, are used, 1 molecule of oxygen is produced? No, 6 molecules of oxygen are produced. B, when 1 molecule of water is used? No, there are 6 molecules of water. So A is wrong and B is wrong. C, when 6 molecules of water are used? That's correct. 1 molecule of glucose is produced. That's correct. So for answer C, both parts are correct. D, when 1 molecule of glucose is produced, 12 molecules of oxygen are used. 12 molecules of oxygen are used? No. There would be 18 atoms, but no molecules. Molecules are also being produced of oxygen, but no molecules are going in. The reactants are carbon dioxide and water. If you were reading a scientific report and it referred to a wavelength of 455 nanometers, which color would it be referring to? So we have 400 and 500 and 600, and we have a line in the middle and a line in the middle. So this must be halfway between 500 and 600, so 550, and this one would be 450. There is 100 difference, so the line halfway must be 50. So what color is it referring to? It's referring to the color blue. So C is the correct answer. Violet is 400, ultraviolet is not included, and green is 500. So the violet and the green are either side, 400 and 500, but blue is in the middle of those two. What is the median number of hurricanes per decade? The median number of hurricanes per decade. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 decades. So we want 3 and 3, and we want the middle one. So take away the 3 highest. Well, we can use the graph line. If we take this line here, only 3 of them are over this line. So they must be the 3 maximum. 2 of them are below this line. So 2 of them are below that. 2 are on the line. So one of these 2 will be the median. They have the same number, so either of those 2 can be the median. If we follow the line down, we get the answer 15. So the correct answer is C. The median number of hurricanes is 15. Now, in an ecosystem, producers convert the sun's energy into a usable source for other organisms. Primary consumers eat the producers, secondary consumers eat the primary consumers, and tertiary consumers eat secondary consumers. Some organisms eat more than one type of organism. In the food web, look at the food web above. Notice that the lion is both a scavenger and a secondary consumer. So a scavenger is something that eats a dead animal. Okay? The scavenger is something that eats a dead animal. Well, the lion eats the dead wildebeest. It also eats the zebra and the gazelle and the giraffe, but it takes something that is dead and eats that. What else do we have that has more than one role in this ecosystem? Well, the giraffe, there is only one arrow coming into the giraffe, and that's from the acacia tree. So the giraffe is only a primary consumer. A is not the correct answer. The hyena also eats the dead wildebeest, so the hyena is also a scavenger. You can see the arrow coming in here. But the hyena also eats the zebra. So the hyena eats the zebra and it eats dead animals. So the hyena looks like a good answer. The cheetah, well, the cheetah eats the cheetah is here. The cheetah eats the gazelle and the cheetah eats the hare. The hare is a primary consumer. The gazelle is also a primary consumer. Therefore, the cheetah is a secondary consumer only. The dung-rolling beetle, well, dung is another word for excrement, animal poo, if you like. So the beetle that rolls the dung might be a decomposer. They might be breaking down animal waste from another part of the food web. Just like the soil microbes. After the animal is dead, the microbes would start to break up the dead animal. So animal waste and the carcass, the dead body of animals, these are both broken down to release nutrients back into the soil. But D is not going to be more than one role. The correct answer is a hyena. The hyena is both a secondary consumer and a scavenger. If additional cheetahs were introduced into this ecosystem, what would happen? There would be a decrease in what? So, cheetah, we have more cheetah. If we have more cheetahs will need to eat more animals. So more gazelle will be eaten. More hares will be eaten. So the gazelle population and the hare population would decrease. Answer D is correct. The dung population would also increase. The dung-rolling beetle population survive on the animal waste of the cheetah. So if there's more cheetahs, there's more poo, there's more excrement. So there could be more food for the beetles. The hyena has no direct link to the cheetah, so the hyena would not be affected. The lion population might go down a little bit. If the gazelle population goes down because there's more cheetahs, there might be less food for the lion. But that would be a secondary, indirect effect. The question asks for shortly thereafter. So the first effect would be the gazelle and the hare decreasing. Later, other animals that eat the gazelle and hare might decrease if there's less food available, but the short term, the correct answer is the hare population decreases. As part of a chemistry experiment, 1025 milliliters of water is mixed into a beaker that contains 175 milliliters of motor oil. After adding the water, how many liters of liquid are there? So we have 1025 plus 175 gives the answer 1200 milliliters. But 1 liter is 1000 milliliters. So how many liters are there? We need to divide by 1000. So we can move the decimal point 1, 2, 3. The correct answer will be 1.2 liters. So the correct answer is D. If you chose A, then you added the two numbers correctly, but you did not read the question carefully. You're asked for liters, not milliliters. Students are researching families with one brown-haired parent and one red-haired parent to understand how recessive hair color genes interact with dominant genes. They studied the offspring of a heterozygous brown-haired man. So the man has the gene BB, and that gives brown hair. So because the heterozygotic man is brown-haired, B, brown, is dominant. There's also a homozygous recessive red-haired man, or red-haired woman, sorry, that has BB. So this, we can say that B, the small b, is recessive, and it is the gene for red hair. Of the 4 children, 3 have brown hair, 1 has red hair. If the couple has another child, what is the probability that this child will have brown hair? Now, there's one sentence here that is there to confuse you. They already have 4 children, and their 3 have brown and 1 has red hair. That's therefore confusing you, because what the previous children has no effect on what the next children have. Just like if you toss a coin. If you toss a coin and you get a head, that does not mean that next time you'll get a tail. The events are independent events. There is no link between the events. Every time there is the probability to get all of the options. So we need to do a Punnett square. So let's take the father's genes first. The father will give 1 dominant gene to 2 of the offspring and 1 recessive gene to 2 of the offspring. And then if we look at the mother's genes, the mother will be giving a recessive gene to every child. So really, there should be 2 out of 4 with brown hair and 2 out of 4 with red hair. There is a 50-50 chance that you get brown hair and a 50-50 chance that you get red hair. So if they have another child, forget about what the previous ones had. That does not make any difference to the next one. The next one has a 50-50 chance to get red hair and brown hair. So the answer is C. How many calories does someone need to eliminate from their diet in order to lose weight? First, they should calculate their basal metabolic rate, the BMR, which identifies how many calories they burn each day when at complete rest. After calculating their BMR, they can then use an additional formula to factor in their level of activity. There are separate BMA formulas for men and women, and these formulas require 3 variables: the age, the height, and the current weight. This is the BMR formula for women. the BMR is equal to 655 plus 4.35 times the weight in pounds times 4.7 times the height in inches minus 4.7 times the age. According to the formula, which the following will result in a lower BMR? So greater age. If you increase the age, then you will increase what is inside of this bracket. If you increase what's inside of this bracket, this is going to become a negative number. So imagine you had an age of 1. So 4.7 times 1 is 4.7. So you will be subtracting 4.7. But if the age then goes to 2, 4.7 times 2 would equal 9.4. So now you subtract 9.4. Your BMR is going to become a lower number because this is a negative number. We can see that negative here in the formula. This is a negative number. So answer A would give you a lower BMR. For the greater height, well, if you increase the number, you would increase what is inside of that bracket, and a higher number multiplied by anything else will give you a higher result. So this would increase. And then the greater weight, well, it's the same. These are both positive numbers, and when you're increasing by positive numbers, you are increasing the overall total. So B and C would both increase the BMR. D is wrong. Answer A would decrease the total basal metabolic rate. Okay, I'm going to stop this video now. It's already 47 minutes long, so I'm going to upload this one onto YouTube, and I'm going to start making the second one. I know these explanations are quite long, but the questions are quite tricky, and so if I make one very long video, it will take you a long time to watch. So I'm going to split this explanation into 2 parts. Osulasai.